For those returning, welcome back, and thank you for your continued trust in our firm. VLP is a financial planning and wealth management firm located in Vienna, Virginia. We work with clients nationwide, though. Our goal is to be a trusted partner to the individuals, families, and businesses that we serve to help them determine what live greater means to them. In the last 25 years, we've grown from a two-person firm all the way to a team of 21, and that includes 7 certified financial planners, 5 accredited investment fiduciaries, 2 chartered financial analysts, and a certified divorce financial analyst. Today, our advisors have a collective experience of over 100 years, and we're celebrating to be recognized by Washingtonian and Northern Virginia Magazine as top advisors, which is an honor that we've held for over a decade now. So that's very cool. We're also proud to have been named a Best of the City winner by DC Magazine as well. Today, we're joined by Vic Rowe. He's a senior regional consultant at MFS Investments, and he's going to discuss the lifelong journey of wealth building and how you can start creating a legacy for your loved ones at different stages of life. So with that being said, Vic, I'm going to turn over to you if you want to go ahead and get started.
All right, Andrew, thank you. And thank you, everyone, for your time and attention. As mentioned, I'm Victor Rowe. I'm with MFS, which stands for Massachusetts Financial Services. And our history is that we created the mutual fund over 100 years ago. Today, what I'd like to do is kind of share with you some of our intellectual capital. Everyone here is on a different journey, but it is a journey. So in the financial world, we view it a lot like kind of climbing Mount Everest. It sounds like an impossible task for a lot of people, but a lot of people don't really understand the complications in just your financial life and what it takes to be successful. Just like kind of climbing Mount Everest. Most people who've ever seen a movie or probably read a book on the topic of climbing Mount Everest probably realize an unbelievable statistic, which is, it's a sad statistic. It's that most people that perish while doing this climb perish on the way down. But what they never really tell you is the obvious, which is that they made most of the mistakes on the way up. And so what you're really looking for in life is you're looking to make as few mistakes kind of in the accumulation phase we're going to get into. And you want to work with someone good who can help you limit these mistakes, understand when you're making one, and then more importantly, figure out how to either correct it or accelerate in a certain area so you can get yourself in a better position. Because we only invest money and we only try to kind of get ahead for the future because of the way down. And the way down seems to be a lot more treacherous because ultimately those are where the mistakes can cost you your life in a sense. In this case, your financial life. It's where most mistakes occur that are catastrophic, meaning that you don't have the time to recover. So I'm going to share my screen and just walk you through just a little bit about kind of the early parts of investing and some of the important do's and don'ts. And then we're going to talk a little bit about kind of the last part of what happens in retirement and when you make those decisions. So I'm going to go ahead and put up my screen here, and hopefully you start to see that there. So as mentioned, the concept here is in do's and don'ts of wealth building, and then I'd say also the don'ts of spending as well. The journey looks something like this, and so this is obviously not as steep as a Mount Everest, but the journey is very much a process of you start to kind of get things working for you, start to climb up, kind of get in the middle, get ready for retirement. And then eventually, we're going to live our life in retirement, hopefully our best life, I like to say. And then we're going to have some considerations. If you are fortunate enough to live a great life and kind of have something remaining, then you may want to start consider creating a legacy and then what that would entail. And there's a lot of mistakes that get made in this phase as well. So the first part of wealth building is pretty basic. I think most people have an understanding of this, although statistics are showing it's getting worse and worse by each generation. And that is, the concept of spending and saving, investing, staying the course, and then of course, the concept of the goal, which is long-term goal. It means that you have to have a long-term vision. So many people today, unfortunately, aren't doing the basics, right? They kind of just live the lifestyle that they want to live. Credit card debt seems to kind of get crazy. Obviously, right now, those payments are double-digit interest, and it's become more and more difficult as generations go on. And a lot of the basic principles that previous generations have used have kind of gone by the wayside. So we're going to talk about some of the importance of what the basics that they have to be doing. And in some cases, hopefully you've done that if you're already through this phase. And then we're going to talk a little bit about, once again, are you ready for retirement as a concept? I see there's already a question in the chat room here. Okay. Oh, questions will be at the end. That's correct. Okay. So starting on the path. So very simply put, if we look at what's going on here, how to create a budget. This isn't that complicated, but for some people in this newer generation, it's becoming more of an issue. So I'll just address it. The needs are probably the most important thing you have to calculate, right? The number one need for most people is going to be shelter. And this will last throughout your whole life, of course, and we'll look at the implications of what the costs are for that over time. But 50% of what you need is going to be needs. So out of what you make, how much do you earn? Think about 50% going towards first housing and rent, which used to typically be about 25%, but that's been growing, obviously, with the increasing cost of things. Food, of course, transportation, obviously, to get back and forth from a job, more than likely at this stage, and then understanding where your bills and utilities are. And so the good news is with this generation is that we have apps and things that can help track this, and there's a lot more better ways to kind of see where you're missing money and spending money in the wrong places. The bad news is that, like I mentioned, the cost of these things have gone up dramatically. And so for some people, their needs could be 75% of what they make. So you have to be extraordinarily disciplined then on the wants. And the wants are the things that we all love to do, go out dining, shopping and travel. These are kind of the luxuries. And so you have to understand where you are in each phase of your life and how much you can spend on that and not spend on it, because you need to be saving about 20%. And if you didn't start this early, and we'll look at some charts here, then it may be even more than that. And this is where you seek great advice from people like VLP and understand, okay, how much am I going to need as soon as you can, kind of get an understanding, and then how much do you need to save? And everyone's going to be differently based on how much they make and, of course, how much they spend. But the goal should be in your mind, if I can save 20% of what I bring home every month, then I'm going to be on a good financial journey and should be successful. So, okay, so the next slide here, it talks a little bit about the concept of the power of compounding. Now, Einstein said this was the most powerful force in the world. He was a lot smarter than me or any of my colleagues, and he would be right in every case. And so this is just a very basic chart of showing you the simplicity of compounding. This is 3% returns versus 5 versus 6. Now, historically speaking, it used to be bonds. I'd say CDs or cash would probably be in the 3 range. I'd call it bonds or CDs would be a 5, and equities would be 6. Now, I got to let you know the last 15 years in equities have been way higher than 6. It's been more than double that number on average. It's been unbelievable. But what you'll just see is a simple $10,000 investment compounded for 40 years, only at 6%, grows to $102,000. And so even just saving a little bit of money over time will compound more effectively and can really turn into something large. And so the number one thing I would say that you need to understand is time in the market, not timing. That's the first mistake people make. It's hey, do we do it now, or should I do it? Should I wait for something else and then do it now? Right? Doing it now, right, as a concept of trying to pick a timeline is a game, because you're trying to pick when to get in and when to get out. And no one has ever predictably done that. What we do know is important is just get invested. And if you leave the money there, the longer you leave it there, the more favorable an outcome you'll get. So it's time in the market, not timing the market. And then simplicity of things like taking advantage of what work may have to offer. So not everybody on this call, of course, some people are going to work for the government, some people will work for the private sector, and some companies may offer matches. And so what this is a simple chart is showing you, let's just say we go back in time and you're 22 years old and you're going to invest at a rate of 6%. Once again, a very modest rate of 6%, which really isn't much, like I said, from historical numbers, but a modest number. Your salary starts out at $40,000. Now, I'd even say today, in reality, that's probably low, but pretty realistic over the last, let's say, 20 years. And so you're going to contribute to your employee contribution plan of about 6% of your income. And then they're going to do a 50% match, right? So they're going to throw 3 on top of that. And then you're going to invest and compound at 6%. And what you'll see on the right-hand side is versus this chart, you go from, the systematic investing process is what this is. You're buying over intervals of time, regardless of what happens with the market. And you wind up with about 900 and call it 20,000 rounded up. So you invested, money along the way at 6%. You got a match involved. and it makes up basically 920,000. Of that number on the right-hand side will show you that your contributions of the 917 only make up 17% of your return. And the 9% comes from the match. The vast majority of your return came from this power of compounding and the power of growth. And so that's why you have to be in it. Staying in it, not timing it, and just staying in the market is the most powerful thing you can do, especially when you're young. Buy in, hold. If you can systematically invest like this is, even better. You typically have even more successful numbers. So time in the market is the most important concept. The mistake and the don't is timing. And so here's what gets most people on the mistakes of coming in and out of the market, and it's our pain threshold. And simply put, I want you to think of this chart as long summers and shallow winters, okay? The winters are in the red and the summers are in the blue. And what you're looking at is a chart that goes back to the 1940s that shows you bull markets versus bear markets. And it's telling you that the average bull market has a duration of over 4 years and an average upside swing of 140%. The average bear market is down 31%, rounded up in this case, right? Or rounded down, I should say, and then has a duration of about 1 year. So what do we typically see? What's the human impulse, right? I'm doing okay. I take a big hit, I make an adjustment. I immediately have to say, I can't take the pain anymore, I'm going to get out. And then what happens? The Federal Reserve, who's going to meet today and say some statements, right? Most likely come in, they make an adjustment, maybe cut interest rates, right? The government maybe put some stimulus package into the world, right? All these things transpire in an effort to get this to turn around. And what happens? It turns around. And then all of a sudden, when it turns around enough, we say, okay, now I finally went back in. And then maybe I missed the first 2 or 3 years of the market. I get back in. And then what happens? After year 4, it goes back down. Right? And then what's my reaction? And so if you knew it was this predictable, right? Hopefully you're starting to notice a pattern. You'd say, well, every time it goes down, that's why I should be more aggressive in the market, right? That should be the instinct you should have. But unfortunately, human emotions get involved. And what we see statistically is most people get out. But if you just stay the course, if you just stay in the market, that is the most powerful thing you can do. So if you can just take the emotions out, and this is where, like, once again, a good Sherpa or a good person to help you kind of on this journey of kind of climbing up, the financial ladder of your life is really important because they can stop you from making bad mistakes. And like I said, most people that will perish on any type of difficult hike or climb will make the mistakes on the way up. So the first thing we got to do is make sure you make the limited amount of mistakes on the way up. And so understand the statistics are on your side. It's more likely than not, if you invest for a long period of time, we define that 3 to 5 years, right? You're going to have a positive outcome over time. All right. So now you've done the right thing. You've listened to your Sherpa. You've gotten pretty far down the line. You kind of know what you had to do and you've accumulated some wealth. Now the question is now the right time to retire? And I hate to say it, but a lot of people are having this journey right now. Right, we've got a lot of changes. What's happening in Washington right now? Some people are saying, "I don't want to go back to work. I'm going to make some decisions. I got to check my numbers." Right? Am I ready to go now? Do I have to wait and see if if I'm going to have to go into work for another 2 years? Right? What am I going to do? And so now we're at that stage where it's never too late to make these decisions, but you have to make a decision. And so this is where you check in with your numbers. And what you're trying to figure out is, do I have enough savings? Is my pension good enough? Where am I at my Social Security benefits? We'll talk about that here in a minute. What am I entitled to? What is my cost of living? How will that change in retirement, right? All these long-term questions you have to start asking, where you're going to need to talk to your Sherpa, your good planner, and say, here's what I'm thinking. What am I not seeing? And what should I do? Like, I kind of want out now, but I don't want to make any mistakes. Should I work longer or should I not? And so all these things become very, very important. But what's important is that after you have this conversation, you're going to develop a plan, a goal. Either it's to retire and understand what that's going to look like, and we're going to get into some of that picture, or it's going to be to work and for how long and what we're trying to accomplish. But either way, you always want to check in with your Sherpa, with your planner in this case, and understand where you are at any given moment so you can make more informed decisions. So the things that you need to be thinking about that don't change, unfortunately, when you go away and retire is taxes. All right, we're going to get a little more depth into this, but taxes are always going to be a factor. Moving to another state. A lot of times the taxes is what drives people to move to another state. That may be sunshine in the case of Florida, but it worked for my parents. My father is a two-time retired police officer out of New York, and him and my mother moved down to Florida for the son and for the taxes. Right? The idea was the pensions wouldn't be touched by state tax, and that was important to them, and they made that decision. So you do see where you're moving to. Are you upsizing? You're downsizing your home, right? In retirement, what does that look like? What do the costs look like associated with that? Then we can't forget about healthcare. We'll look a little bit at that as well. Unfortunately, you know, fortunately, one of the benefits while you work is generally you should have some decent health insurance. But when that goes away, you have to understand kind of, if I go in the government system here, what am I entitled to? What are the other supplements we may have to consider? What are those costs? What's been happening in those costs over time? And certain things I have to know. So it's part of the game understanding that, unfortunately, just because I retire and may not have a mortgage, my expenses don't stop. And I have to be able to kind of take on those expenses and know where that money's coming from. So where it's coming from is an important factor. So one of the things that a good Sherpa is going to teach you on the way up is understanding the idea that we're going to take money from different buckets if we can. And so there are obviously different vehicles in the world that exist for retirement assets. Most people have 401ks and IRAs. And the concept here is, you know, you basically get a tax deduction, or pre-tax money gets to be put into a bucket, and it grows tax-free. But because it grows tax-free, it comes out taxable as ordinary income. And so you're going to be taxed on this money just like you earned it, like you were working. And so this is why you have to understand that if you have $1 million and it's in a traditional IRA or a 401k, and you go to take it out, you can't just divide your $1 million by the amount of time you have and say, okay, this is what the money's going to be, because you have to factor in taxes. And of course, we all know that's a moving scale. I can't promise you what your tax rate's going to be in retirement because it's always moving. So generally, hopefully, fingers crossed, it's lower, right? It should be lower than when you're working. You should be able to hopefully figure out a way to take less and be a lower tax bracket, but it's not guaranteed. And so you have to really understand that, you know, what are your tax implications on what you're doing and where you live. The Roth, which some people have probably talked to you about, and you may even have, and the idea, the beauty of the Roth is it's after tax dollars, but it grows tax-free and comes out tax-free. Well, that is huge, right? Because then you understand exactly what's going on. That means if I do have $1 million in a Roth, that means when I pull it out, it's coming out in the dollar value that it says it is, and I don't have to worry about paying taxes. That is a ginormous advantage. And so if we have the ability to convert to Roth over time, if we have the ability to add Roth to my 401k at my corporation along the way, right? These are things that your Sherpa is going to probably tell you to take advantage of, because it gives you more flexibility in retirement. Very important to have that flexibility. And then you see on here like things like municipal bonds and things like that, which are basically bonds that don't typically get hit by taxes on the federal level, and depending on the type of bond, possibly even on the state level. And so there's some options there as well. But you're going to have to basically understand what your income needs are, and then more importantly, the tax implications. It's not what you make, we all know. It's what you keep. And this is a big part, and maybe the biggest part of what your financial planner helps you do, you know, once you kind of summit in life and decide that you're going to start to retire. All right, so the biggest questions we always get is always going to be around Medicare and understanding my health costs. And this has been a very tough category historically for inflation. We all know, we all want good health care. Nobody wants to downgrade their health care after they retire, right? It's when you're going to need it the most. But the problem is the expenses are high. So Medicare Part A, Part B, right? Think hospital, think doctors. That's what's covered. But what you're going to find out is that you're going to need more than just that, right? You've got long-term care. That's not going to be part of this. If you think that in the long run, you want to make sure that you have insurance money to help protect you as you get older, you know, then you're going to have to kind of plan to pay for that. And those are not cheap and tend to go up over time. Prescriptions, depending on what you're on. You know, you may purchase Part D, and that's highly recommended, but you know, over time, you may or may be off more or less medications, and that can have a dramatic impact on your health costs. If you wear glasses, I do. I wear contacts and glasses now. My gift from the 40s, I like to say. And so there is a pretty big expense with that. I think the last time I got a pair of glasses and the contacts, I think it cost me like $900 or something. So the expenses are high, and unfortunately, we know that over time with inflation, they get higher. Dental. So depending on what happens, I know that for my parents' sake, and as you get older, there tends to be more difficulties. Obviously, heritage will have a lot to do with that. You'll kind of know, where you are in that. But for this case, I know it would be important for me. You may think it's important for you. You may look to try to find a way to subsidize that, because that could be a very expensive outcome if you have some serious dental work needed. Hearing. Hearing is one that affects me as well. I've got about 30% hearing loss already in my life. I think the last time I bought hearing aids, I think, now I went big on this one because I was very addicted to Bluetooth. I think my end of it was $4,000. And I think the insurance company picked up $3,000. So these can be very, very expensive items. Hopefully with technology, normally these numbers come down. But once again, you have to factor in, if you've got hereditary hearing loss in your family, you're going to want to pay attention to this and understand where your supplements are going to come in, and really pay attention to that. And so overall, the realistic part is, you're going to have to pay some type of supplement, chances are, and you need to factor that in to your equation when you're doing your expenses in retirement. That is something that won't go away. Even if you think, hey, the government's going to start picking it up, they're not going to pick up everything. You're going to have a way to offset that. And we can answer some more questions maybe on that in the Q&A portion. So living in retirement is the other part. And I'll stop here just for a picture. There's a phrase that I like to say. I always use my parents as an example. When they retired, it's called the go-go years, right? So when you first retire, and you thought about all the things you wanted to do, and now you have all the time in the world to do it, you're going to go out and you're going to go big. Typically, what we normally see is a lot of travel, right? So this is the time that, hey, we're going to travel here, we're going to travel there. We always said we'd do this if we had the time. Now we have the time. And so you wind up spending a disproportionate amount of money, usually on things like travel and leisure. That becomes a bigger part of some expenses. And then also hobbies. So if, for example, you're a golfer, and you make golf more. If you're doing tennis, maybe you play more tennis or join a country club, right? And so all these things, whatever you typically do for hobby-wise, you basically do that, but you do more of it. Unfortunately, most people, for example, if you weren't a golfer and you think you're going to pick up golf, traditionally that doesn't happen. So you basically just do more of what you're currently doing. You just dedicate more time and resources to that. Rarely do they pick up new things, but ultimately travel becomes the biggest expense. So we call this the go-go years. These are the go-go. Let's go out. Let's go. Let's go do what we want to do. The go-go years are then followed by the slow-go years. I'd say my parents are in the slow-go years at this point, which basically means that it takes a lot to get them out of the house. They don't travel as well and as much. There's always some type of difficulty that has to be contended with, whether it's a hip injury or something. And so they still go, but they slow go. They go places with purpose and not a lot of speed. Okay. And then eventually, my grandmother's a great example. She's 99. And so she's in what I like to call the no-go phase, which means that, hey, we go to her and her ability to be mobile is very limited. And she spends 99.99% of her time indoors. And so those are the no-go years, not going anywhere. But each one of these phases has an expense. The go-go is travel, right? That's a big travel expense as a good example. In the no-go from my grandma, most of her expenses are going to be, believe it or not, it's going to be on housing, and it's going to be on insurance and things of that nature, and then kind of a transition in between for the rest of it. And so I'll give you just a couple of statistics, actually, just on that topic. I just want you to have this in your minds. So just looking back from 2017 to 2022. So obviously a little dated, but just over the last, over a 5-year period of time. The difference between 35 to 44 years old and 75 plus. So that's the bracket. So think 44 to 35 and 75 plus. The difference in housing expense is less than 1.5%. It's 41.6 for the 35 to 44, and it's 40.1 for 75 plus. So you're thinking, well, I don't have a mortgage, right? And I always think about that. And you realize that if it took you 40 years to pay off a house and you own the house and it feels great, unfortunately, I'm going to gamble that the taxes are probably higher. Your electric bills are probably higher than they were. The lawn care is probably higher than it was. But then what does your house need after 40 years is the question I have for you. And you might be thinking of appliances or a roof for the house. And I said, well, it needs maintenance and almost a whole new house. right? It's constant maintenance in a home. And then eventually what happens is you're going to move from that home maybe to something where more assisted living, or maybe even something smaller, but where other costs come up. And so the housing expense is still a great expense throughout your whole lifetime, and you have to factor that in. Healthcare changes dramatically. So from 35 to 44, it's about 7% of your income. And when you get older, over 75, it's more than 16%. So it goes up over time. Food basically stays parallel over time. Transportation goes down as you get older. It goes from 19 to a 12. You still need to have transportation. And then gifts and charities go up when you get older. Those are the major differences. But I want you to understand that housing cost doesn't necessarily drop just because you paid off your mortgage, right? That mortgage kind of gets folded into the other expenses now that it takes to maintain a home as you get older. And so just keep that in mind as time goes on. All right, so the don'ts, I would say, is don't think for a second that your expenses are going to drop dramatically when you enter the retirement phase, right? What you should do is, once again, work with your financial planner to understand where your expenses are going to be, to make sure you get a good number. And then when you do that, what we're hoping for is you're going to pay attention to this chart. And this is the big don't. Don't take more than 4%. All right, that's my don't. Let me explain you how to read this chart. This is a chart showing you investing in 100% US equities, in this case, the S&P 500, right? Or 60% is the next pie chart, which is the blue, is in equities, and 40% is the gray, which is bonds. Use the bond aggregate of bonds. Then the next bar chart or pie chart is the opposite of that. It's 40% equities, the blue, and 60% bonds, and then it's 80% bonds, 20% equities, and then all bonds. And what you see on the left-hand side is your withdrawal rate. So let's just say it's $1 million, and you're going to pull out 4%. What are the odds that you run out of money in each one of these 5 buckets? 100% equity, you have a 97% chance you won't run out of money if you invest 100% in the market and you only take a 4% withdrawal. But there's a 3% chance you will. But if you take a 5%, just 1% more in withdrawal, just what's 1%? You just took 1. Now you have a 19% chance you won't make it through retirement. You take 6, now there's a 30% chance. All right, 38 if you want to take 7, and a 51% chance, more likely than not, that you won't make it to retirement if you're pulling out 8% of your portfolio. If I take that to a 60-40, right, 4%, I'm 100% never ran out of money. In fact, if I go the other way, 40-60, same boat. What if I go all the way down and put 100% in fixed income? I just put it in bonds, the safest thing I can think of, right? So you can put it in bonds. 52% chance I run out of money. So they call this the 4% rule. And what it means is that you have to stay diversified, because when you enter retirement, you are a long-term investor, and long-term investors invest in stock. We use bonds to help offset that risk, right, and help balance out your portfolio. It's called diversification, which I know everyone who works with VLP will know that phrase. But it's a very important factor. You have to understand that you have to have equities. You're a long-term investor when you retire, because you're going to live for a long term. A lot of us will live in retirement longer than we were working, and you have to understand that fact. But the rule of 4% is real. So if you're hamming egging this, I like to say, and you're just going to try it yourself, I would just say, take your number, figure out what 4% is, right? Think about and be invested in a diversified portfolio, and then figure out if that's enough money to live on based on your calculations. But 4% is the number that we get real comfortable with. If it's lower than that, we're ecstatic. Okay, so we'd love to have you withdraw 4% or less for those reasons. Now, part of that equation you're going to come up with is Social Security. Depending on when year you were born, there's different ages of qualifications, but the punchline is still the same. And here it is. Every year that you can wait past your full retirement age, the government is going to give you an 8% return plus an inflation kicker. I want to say that again. 8% return plus an inflation kicker. There is no investment I know of that can guarantee this other than the US government, okay? They're giving you an 8% adjustment for every year you wait. And so it is in your best interest, and possibly your spouse's best interest, to wait as long as you can to take Social Security. And if you do that successfully, you can enhance your amount of money given Social Security by a good amount. So if normally, if you're taking a full retirement age, maybe the highest bracket's sitting around $4,000, somewhere in this range, depending on where you are. And if you make it to 70, you're going to be in the $5,000 range. And so this is 1,000 more a month or 12,000 more a year. And that's a meaningful amount on a monthly basis when you're looking at the expenses that we're talking about to help offset. And it's coming in every single month, right? And so this is one of the things you have to factor in. And this is where you work with your financial planner or you work with your Sherpa to understand, what should I be doing right now? What should I be looking at? The impulse is always the same. Vic, shouldn't I just take the money now and invest it in the market? And I would say to you, well, here's the math. You have to make a 10% return with that money every single year for you to win. And that's not something that anyone can guarantee. It might have worked out over the last few years, but historically speaking, that is not the case, right? This comes with no volatility. If you just wait, you get it, and that's the idea. And so you may come up with strategies that help you delay this. So for example, if you wanted to retire, let's say at 66, and you said, well, I'm going to need more money off my portfolio for the next 4 years in order to wait, right, to kind of get to 70, then that's something that you would work out and say, here's what we're going to do. And then when this happens, we're going to do this instead. And then we're going to take that Social Security and we're going to have this much payment. And then here's how we're going to invest from here. You're going to make these adjustments. But I want to stop most people's impulses, including my father's, right? I couldn't stop him. He had 2 pensions and he insisted on taking it right away. Which I thought was a mistake, but I couldn't talk him out of it. Now he's 78 years old and obviously could have benefited greatly from this concept. But ultimately, in every which way, you should wait. Now, I have someone on the line with us, Trevor Garrett, who's my internal partner at the end for Q&A. If you have any Social Security questions, there have been some changes recently for people that have pensions, like, for example, teachers or firemen as an example, that have enhanced some benefits and some potential good outcomes that have been passed. But we can answer some questions on that as we get down the line. But I would just tell you, as part of your proper planning, if you can make it if you can wait to 70, it's a big impact on your life and a lot more certainty. All right. Why did I harp so much on it, I guess, right? Why did I beat that up so much? And the answer is because of these statistics. It's pretty simple. 1 out of 3 people that reach the age of 65 will at least make it to 90. So that's about a 33% chance, right? If you're 65 now or older, you got about a 33% chance it's going to be you. 1 out of 7 65-year-olds will live until at least 95. Add 5 more years onto the mix here. Okay. And so you need more money. You need 5 years worth of living here. And once again, these are going to be some pretty expensive years. It tends to get more expensive on the healthcare and the housing side as you get older. And so once again, proper planning for that is really important. And I always say, if I make you plan to live to 100 and you don't make it, you won't be mad at me. But if I tell you you plan to live to 82 and you're living at 83, you're going to be really upset, right? So the idea behind it is you always plan for the best case scenario, unless you have pre-existing knowledge of something else. You're always planning for the longest outcome because that's what keeps you the safest. And then the other stat here is if you're married and you're 65 years old, there's a 50-50 chance one of you are making 90. So the odds are in your favor as a married couple that once you hit 65, that somebody's going to need money into their to at least 90. So that's a long period of time. This is why I keep saying you're a long-term investor. And that's a long period of time. And so you want to wait to get those extra payments from Social Security because that can make a great difference in your comfort as you get older. All right. So now we understand that we want to do a lot of good things earlier on in our lives. I hope we did, right? Give good advice to people that are there. You want to save early. It's time in the market is the most important factor. We know that in retirement, right? My expenses drop, but they don't drop that dramatically, not nearly as much as I think. I'm going to spend a lot of money on different things as time goes on, more so in the early stages, and we're going to start to slow down. And then other things like housing will start to pick back up in life, and we have to account for that, and especially insurance. And so that's all part of it. So let's say we've got it all planned out and it's working great, and we've got some great advice, and our Sherpa helped us get up the mountain, and we're getting down, and we know we're going to be safe, and we're going to walk off. It's going to be great, and we have all this extra resources with us. And so now the question is, now I'm thinking about legacy planning. There are so many mistakes that people make every day. It's so-and-so passed away. I'm really sorry what happened. Just any will, no will. Do you know where the deeds to the car are? No, they're in a laptop and no one has the passcode. It's in a safe. No one has the combination, right? I've dealt with this personally many, many times. And I can tell you that it's very frustrating for loved ones when they can't answer these questions, and it's a very stressful period of time, but it's even more stressful when you have no answers upon the simple financial questions. And so a part of leaving a lasting legacy is being forward thinking. Nobody likes to think about this, right? It's not something pleasant, but it doesn't take a lot to really get prepared. And then more importantly, execute this. I always say a mistake is letting the government get in between you and what you wanted, right? You go to probate and you didn't have a will, the government gets involved, right? Attorneys get involved, money gets lost. So if the money doesn't go where you intended, I call that a failure of legacy planning. So let's talk about where the intentions are and how this changes. This is a very simple map that you can get a copy of from VLP. They have their prints out of this, but it basically just tells you in your life who, if you were going to take care of somebody with a lasting legacy, who would be on your list. And so as you're younger, in your 60s, for example, you may still have your parents, and you might say, hey, I'm still concerned about their well-being, and if something should happen to me, I want to make sure they're okay, and they're on your list. You could have children, you have nieces and nephews, you could have friends, neighbors, and so on and so forth. And so these people need to be kind of accounted for. And then unfortunately, over time, some people may pass, or relationships may change and may fall off this list over time, and other people may come on. But you have to have a good knowledge of kind of where you want things to go in general in your life, so you can prepare documents and things appropriately. These documents that are really important, obviously a will I've mentioned earlier. This is a simple thing to do, but it's very, very important to understand if you have to do this, because it's going to solve a lot of problems. Power of attorneys. So there's two that really come to mind. It's financial and it's healthcare. If you have children, I have an Irish twin, my sister, and in my life, you probably imagined I'm going to be the financial, right? More pragmatic, more brain for that, and understanding those capabilities and what we need to do. My sister, a little bit more emotional than I am, and they decided that it would be more important to give her healthcare power of attorney. Not that I would do anything wrong, but they just said this makes more sense for us. We think maybe she's got more compassion, right? So different skill sets for both of us. But you have to start thinking about, if something were to happen, I was incapacitated, who would I want to take care of this? And so you have to start planning those things, because if it's not in place, then things get very complicated from there. Locating financial records. Now, you could have a situation where VLP may have some options for you that can help you keep records, so they can access them upon something happened to you, and people to get permission. They may have you have a conversation about putting somebody on file that is important to you, that should something happen to you, that they call this person, take over certain responsibilities. But you kind of want to know where they are. So one of the things I mentioned earlier, a good friend of mine unfortunately passed away from cancer, and he was in my business, and he was a very smart guy, and he took the time to do everything right, but he put it into a laptop and never gave anyone the password, or at least never communicated to where it was, and basically erased everything that they had done. Impossible to get to certain documents, created a lot of stress in that situation. And so somebody has to have the password. I like to say someone needs a combination for the safe. For me, I can figure out where I live, but for me, I have a safe in my garage, and written on the back of one of my wife's diplomas is the combination, just in case she ever forgets it. And then someone of my friend in Seattle happens to know exactly where that's located should something happen. And so you have to kind of trust some people and put it somewhere. I don't care if you have a safe combination and you put it in a document inside VLP in a file and say, hey, if this ever happens, make sure so-and-so gets this. The idea is that you have to communicate. It's one thing to do, it's another thing to let people know it's been done and that it's available in somewhere, right? Hey, I have this document, something happens to me, reach out to my financial planner. They can tell you where it's located. So you got to start thinking about those steps as well. And then once again, I mentioned healthcare. You better put down your directive of what you want and your wishes. Very important to kind of let people know what that is, because once again, that person could shift over time, and you want to make sure that you were very clear on what you wanted. And then the last part is the valuables. This happens from time to time. I can tell you some popular ways that people do it, but there's emotional things involved. So example would be a piece of artwork, mom's wedding ring, a piece of jewelry, a stamp collection, okay? All these things over time, which you build bonds with your family around. There may be people that want certain things, or you want to have certain things. And they're going to want to know why and why that is. There's something called the family love letter. It's a third-party thing. It's not an MFS thing. It's out there in the ether. But it's a way to kind of communicate with people that why you decide to give someone something if you want to do that. It gives a lot of closure, and it's something that I would say may help a lot over time. The other way you could do it is the lottery system. I was with a family friend, and they have a lot of artwork and things, and they had their children come in, and the oldest got the first pick. And they worked it like an NFL draft for football fantasy draft. So the first person got the pick, then the next, and the next, and the next, and then the second person, the last person who picked gets to pick again, and it goes back around the other way. They call this like a snake type of thing. And the idea is that they said, hey, I want this, and they took the piece of art off the wall and wrote the name on the back and said, okay, that's going to you if something happens, and so on and so forth. And they kind of doled it out that way. And so everyone kind of understood what they were getting and why they were getting it. And what that did was allow for a lot of closure over time, so people have a good understanding of what's there and why they got it, and the importance to the family and the legacy. So those are other things that you have to start thinking about when you think about legacy planning over time. So there's a lot of holes here. I'm at 45 minutes is where we want to be. There's a lot of holes in here. There's a lot of different questions that we can answer back and forth. But what I want you to understand is that you're on an awesome journey. Okay, you need to pick a great Sherpa, help you make good decisions, right? Because it's important to get up a mountain, but it's even more important to get off the mountain, right? You don't successfully climb a mountain until you get to the top and you get all the way off, right? That's when you know it's success. And everyone's at a different part in their journey. So if you want, let's open it up for some questions. Let's talk about where you are and if you have any specific questions, and we can answer them from here. So with that, Andrew, let me turn it back over to you.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Vic. Really appreciate the presentation. At this time, feel free to put any questions in the chat. And otherwise we'll give it a couple minutes. And to that point, while we wait for questions to come through, I would just say, as Vic mentioned, we have plenty of supplementary materials for everything that was talked about today. So please reach out to your advisor or your team, and we can always make a connection there or send you the materials.
I wonder what combination is behind Andrew's CFP. No, I'm just kidding.
Absolutely.
I see it back there. What are you written on there?
Right. It doesn't look like we have any questions coming through, so we'll go ahead and leave it there. Vic, again, appreciate you and Trevor for hopping on, and thank you for everyone that attended the webinar. Stay tuned. We have some exciting stuff coming out for February and our podcast as well. Check out the VLP Live Greater View. Any questions, please reach out to your advisors, but otherwise, hope you have a great rest of your Wednesday.
Good to see you. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Vic.